This is the Waynesville-St. Robert Veteran of the Year, Master Chief Retired Kathi Crawford, who has given 21 years of service to the United States Navy. She rides with the Christian Motorcycle Organization and the Patriot Guard Riders. She is also the chairman of the Military Quilt Committee of Gone to Pieces Quilt Guild, and is a member of the Kickapoo Trace Muzzleloaders Club. Kathi has also earned a Bachelor of Science degree and is a CB Combat Warfare Specialist and an Enlisted Aviation Warfare Specialist. Kathi was born in St. Joseph, Missouri, and currently lives in Crocker, Missouri. She stands as a paragon of virtue and selflessness for us all. So, Kathi, we're going to be asking you a few questions. Are you ready? Just questions. Why did you enlist in the Navy?
I had a couple of reasons, but where do I start? When I was working in a nursing home and I was a candy striper, and I thought I wanted to be a nurse. And when I had to hold somebody down while they put the IV in them, and when they got done, I started doing this number. It was making me dizzy. So I also was driving an 18-wheeler with my brother at the time, and so I said, I can go in the service and do that. So.
It's fun. Is there any significance behind you joining on St. Patrick's Day?
It came down to a friend of mine and I went to a party. It was a costume party, and we borrowed a Navy uniforms from a retired Navy man, and so we dressed up as sailors at the party, and then we said, hey, let's go join the Navy. Okay, and so off we went.
So why did you pick the Navy?
Well, like I said, mainly because of the uniforms that we were wearing. We decided that was the route to go, and nothing changed it any different. So, and I picked the CBs because I wanted to drive an 18-wheeler. It was the only reason I was going. And because I drove with my brother, and you couldn't have a license, a CDL, until you turned 21. And so I've always been an independent person, and I didn't want to always have to be driving with somebody else. So,
can you tell us a little bit about boot camp?
Boot camp, well, probably the nicest part about boot camp was I went with my friend, Barbetta was her name, and we went in on the buddy system. At least I wasn't going in all alone. Her and I went together, and as long as you can follow orders, you do just fine. And I learned from my mother how to follow orders. I call her my drill sergeant mom, because you knew yes ma'am and no ma'am, and so I had no problem in boot camp.
Do you have any stories about boot camp?
The biggest thing I remember is I had to go to the extra training time for not folding a washcloth correctly. So that's why I say you follow orders down to even folding your towels.
Yeah. Did you get your Bachelor of Science through the military?
I got it after hours. I took computer courses and did it that way.
So why did you choose to get your Bachelor of Science?
I knew when I retired I would have to do something, and since I spent that many years training others to run heavy equipment and everything else you can think of, then I knew I could just continue on with that, but you have to be certified. So I just took the route and went that way to have a certificate to do it.
Okay.
Even taught Girl Scouts how to run dozers.
What was one of the most memorable places you were stationed at?
I'd have to say Guam. When our battalion was being relieved by another battalion, I met Bill Crawford, my husband, for the first time. So we were doing the turnover, and we had 4 weeks together getting to know each other, and 5 years later we got married. So I'd have to say Guam.
Tell us about your first tour of duty.
Pearl Harbor. I was low man on the totem pole. I was an E1. You did whatever they told you to do, from cleaning a toilet to mopping a floor. We were on the submarine base, and the main job there was to run a crane, put parts and different things into the submarines to help them. But you didn't get to be a crane operator until you were at E5. And here I was at E1. But after hours, I would stay and train, and I ended up getting my license. And of course, if I was there during the day and they had a lift, they'd let me go along, but I wouldn't get stationed on, because on the crane crew, you were 24 hours on, 48 hours off, and then they would rotate because you'd have to stay there the whole time for calls or anything else. When they came out with the urinalysis tests, I would say 90% of the crane operators did not pass the urinalysis test. So they only had one crew that could run the crane. But they had an E3 who was licensed and could run it. So I got to step up and go on the crane crew. That's why I liked Hawaii the best, because I thought I wanted to just drive an 18-wheeler, but once I got in a crane, entirely different world.
How hard is it to operate a crane?
I guess it's like anything else. Everybody's got a touch for it or a feel for it. It's not as hard as you think it is.
Where was your favorite duty station?
I've thought about that. I would have to say the U.S. or overseas, because every time I acted as a tourist. Back here in the U.S., if I go do the tourist sites here, it's pretty impressive, you know. And the same thing when I was in Europe. I did the same thing, is just played the tourist. And I even have my piece of the German wall that I helped tear down. So, because I was on leave and happened to be up there the day the wall came down. So there was a little German, he was probably 7 or 8, and he had a hammer and he was going crazy with it. And so he'd stop and he'd rest. And so when he stopped and rested, I tapped on the shoulder and said, and he goes, so I got to beat that wall down. I think that's what I like the most about the military, is it gets you out of, you know, what you think is the only way in life. You get to go see how the rest of the world is truly living.
How did you get into quilting?
When I retired and moved to dry land instead of warm country where the beaches are, I had to think of something to do in the winter time when you wanted to stay in and stay warm. My sister had given me a quilt long ago that she had made, and so I thought, well, why not? I'll take up quilting. And so I took my PT gear and started my first quilt. And can I show it? That was my first quilt out of my PT gear, because I said I don't have to go running around with the rest of the troops anymore, and so I don't need my PT gear. So now I can just go camping in it instead. And then when I got that done, I said, well, now what do you do with your uniform? I said, well, let me see what I can do with that. They changed our uniform partway through. We went from solid green to camouflage, and so I took both of them and made another quilt.
Tell us about your quilt organizations that you sit on.
The Gone to Pieces Quilt Guild does a lot of donation quilts, and they donate quilts or any other items that are needed in different places. And they also will make quilts that go to the families of a military member who was either killed in action or missing or has passed. They'll do a quilt for them also. And so they have given all the veterans in an entire nursing home, quite a few nursing homes we've covered. It's covered all the vets there, and so that they know they are still appreciated for what they've done.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we have not covered?
Be brave. Follow your heart and do the things that they tell you can't be done. Because that's the CBs we run on can do. And you can ask anybody that we do things that they tell us that's never been done. And I face that many times on women can't do that. Women can't do that. As a heavy equipment operator, that was not a normal place for women to be. And so I was like, oh yeah, watch this. And of course we run into bumps. We run into things. actually got out for a while and ran a crane on the civilian side, and until I realized they were paying me half the pay as the male crane operators. And I said, well, at least if I go back in the military, I'm guaranteed equal pay, which ended up, that looked like a bad piece, but in the big picture, it was good because it got me to go back in and get the retirement and meet my husband and all the other things that goes with it. So even if you're going over a few bumps, that something good's going to come out of it. You just got to look for it.